Thank you for watching Conscious Consumer Network. The live stream broadcast is free to view. You can pause and rewind live broadcasts to catch up, or view shows at a later date by accessing our free archives of all shows. Check out our broadcast guide to see what's on. You can show your support by donating to our network support fund. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, or subscribe to the monthly newsletter for updates. We thank you for supporting free and independent media.
This is For the Love of Learning, Voices of the Alternative Education Movement. Be inspired by the voices of visionaries, changemakers, and ordinary, extraordinary people who do what they do, all for the love of learning.
This is For the Love of Learning, Voices of the Alternative Education Movement. I'm Lainey Liberty, and this is episode number 103. In this episode, we're going to speak with the visionary behind the project EDUshifts Now, a collective book initiative whose mission is to create a social momentum around the most promising developments in education by connecting thousands of people who can and are changing education. By the end of 2017, the idea is to connect 10,000 educators committed to creating human-centered education, starting with the first 1,000 EDUshifters that support this social experiment. The grand vision of the project is to make positive transformation of our society and its implications on our educational system visible. This project is a collaborative project, and there are many education change makers involved. Tonight, we're going to meet a few of them. I want to remind our audience that you can find out more about each of our panelists on the show notes page, located at fortheloveoflearningshow.com. There, look for episode number 103. This episode is a pre-record, so we're going to jump right in.
I sat in front of every class, desperate to please my teachers.
We want to have a different life.
How to prepare for that new world. We need new ways of learning. We need new kinds of education.
We have to break down borders. It's totally a transformation, a shift, which is so fast. It's amazing.
Yo, hey, so welcome to this wonderful moment, because we are going to meet here with 4, 5, 6 exceptional, wonderful human beings. over the last 6-7 years, I've been traveling around in order to find out where's the edge of the future of education, where is the progress and where's the innovation of education going. And within this time, I've been meeting a lot of people, wonderful pioneers, change makers from all around the places where I thought, okay, why are they not seen, or why don't we like create kind of a collective call? Why don't we really come together in our ideas that are so different and so outstanding, and at the same time it's very often not really like coming together. And so we have, after talking to Tatiana Gouveia from Brazil, who was part of the National Conference of Alternatives in Education in Brazil, she said, why don't we write a book? And this was kind of the starting point when I started to ask people around me that I think that are really very exceptional in their thoughts and very outstanding in what they can tell the world. And so we created a collective call, because what we also saw with what I've been seeing for like 5-6 years, we don't have a joint narrative in the alternative for the in the transformation of education. So there are many standalone projects and initiatives. There are people very often working and understanding with similar problems, with sharing resources, and our idea was, why not bringing them together and giving them a voice that is stronger than just one person or one project alone. And because we're doing it in the form of transformation of education, we thought, why don't we do it in a different form? Why don't we do it as a game? Why don't we redefine the medium book? And this is what we're going to talk today, and we are going to meet some authors, and we're going to meet also, we're also going to see what is the immediate impact of this initiative.
Thank you, Philippe. This is such an incredible project, and I think this project runs parallel to the mission for this show, For the Love of Learning. It's really about uniting these voices within alternative education. But you talk about creating a joint narrative. Can you talk a little bit more about what a joint narrative means, if indeed everybody has the same idea of what alternative education is or can be, and if everybody's coming at it from the same perspective?
Well, what I could see in the past was that many people have been working in the transformation of education. Very often, also because there is a lot of focus on your own project, your own initiative, and since it's very often outside of the system, it doesn't get really a lot of support. So what has happened is that many people are really like coming from the same pain or coming from the same intention in order to create alternatives. And those alternatives are so widespread. They're very often in the same field, speaking, doing the same, creating a similar result, creating a similar consequence. And so what is happening there, and now this is a very great moment because I'm here in Ukraine, and there's just a meeting finishing with around 30 people who are, it's not finishing yet, it's taking on right now. They are joining us now in the call, and they will like also be part and listen what is going on. Come in, guys. So this is what is now also not only happening on a global level, it's also happening in kind of in smaller places, in regional places, as it is in Holland, as it is in Brazil, and now in a very strong force also here in Ukraine. We see that a lot of people, a lot of initiatives are moving in the same direction, or moving in the same direction of transforming education, but very often they are not connected. They are very often there are also different visions of where the future of education is going to, which is really wonderful, it's really beautiful and important. At the same time, because of the difference, there's also a lack of support or a lack of connectivity, a lack of collaboration going on, because everybody is really like so focused on their own solution. And this is where we are going to, in order to create a call, which is a call not coming out from 1 or 2 or 3 people, but really like from a huge community.
I absolutely love that, because we see more times than not that there are philosophical ideals about how education on a grand scale should change. But what you're talking about is a grassroots, on the ground effort, and then taking those efforts and connecting them as a connected network. And I think that's beautiful. Do you want to go ahead and introduce the group that just arrived behind you, or do we want to come back to them, because we do have other panelists from around the world? Which sits best with you, Philippe, in terms of moving forward with this call?
I think it's here. It's very interesting. There are around now how many people? 15. Say hi. In Ukraine, that would be cool. So you see, it's really grassroots-like. It's like happening in the moment. Everything what we are doing here. It's probably a small part of our and everything what you see here is also coming out because of the book. Because what we have been setting up the book now for around 2 years. And we started like really promoting and making a crowdfunding campaign, for example, over the last 1 month. And I met on this journey, I met Ira like 3 weeks ago. And like, it's amazing what dynamic is going on just here in Ukraine. So what we are seeing, what we can see, that this call, we need a collective call. It will not stop just with this book. It will not just stop with one book. I hope that there are really stories coming out, for example, from these movements that are here also in Ukraine. Then we can really like create kind of this getting more into in the sphere where also the mainstream is getting aware of what is really happening in the transformation of education. And so I would say, let's go on with the panel, and we also will have questions that we also can ask them later.
Yeah, wonderful. And I agree. I think that's a great way to move forward. And I want to welcome everybody that's here. And I think it's great because it does show that there is a movement growing. And I just love that. But before we go to the group that's sitting with you and with Ira, let's move on to Floris first. Floris, would you tell us a little bit about yourself and your connection to this project and kind of the way you see this project progressing and perhaps maybe some of the projected outcomes?
Well, that's a beautiful, hi everybody. Thank you for having me here. Well, as what Philip is saying is actually started is everywhere in the world as people having suffered because of education or feel it's not adequate for what they need in the world or what the world needs for the changes like climate change. You know, are we educating our children to be part of the problem and having jobs with the current system, or are we asking them and helping them to be part of the solution? And then I haven't even talking about that many gifts are not rewarded or even seen by current education. And everywhere in the world, there are pioneers working with this, whether they got ideas from the outside world through like the speech of Sir Ken Robinson, Why Do Schools Kill Creativity, or the works of John Taylor Gatto, or Benjamin Zander. So there's a lot of people around the world, or the rediscovery of the values of indigenous people also everywhere in the world, where we feel they have a wisdom that we lost. And it's very hard for those that think we are the pinnacle of civilization because we have the power, that we perhaps need to be more humble and see that we are part of the system. We're not controlling the earth. We are part of living nature. Now, all these things together, all these pioneers together are part of working together and often also working hard and struggling on their own. And then with Philip starting to travel around the world and connecting all these people, and there are also next to Philip more people doing this, but it's all those initiatives that say, hey, you are not alone, and actually what you're saying makes sense. And there's all these people in the world rediscovering how to do that, or discovering how to do that, and how to prepare people for the 21st century. Sometimes that's the emphasis. Sometimes the emphasis is the rediscovery of nature. Sometimes the emphasis is critical thinking. Sometimes the emphasis is, I would say, social entrepreneurship. And so that's what I see Philip is doing, and I'm working on also grassroots. Started my own school together with other people. Somebody else started it, really. I helped with it, called Nomads in Amsterdam, and before that I worked for Chaos Pilots in Denmark. And I'm also doing a lot of experiments. What are we doing in education? So I invented a whole series of classes called You Are a Movement, which is about all the things you never had at school but would have liked to have learned. So there's an experiment. So one of the lessons was called The Unexplainable. So where people share stories of all those unexplainable moments that are not scientific, but like a dream, giving you meaning and changing how you envision life, or working with intuition, which is so important, intuition, both from in a corrupt system where, who can you trust and who not, and in where openings, so these kind of things, or how to rebel, which schools will teach you how to rebel, which is also sometimes an essential lesson. Or you have people that rebel all the time, and then they need to perhaps learn when are they shooting themselves in the foot because their anger is not helping. So it's also, how do you have effect? I work for Nomads, which is a very small social business school, where we ask the question, who are you? What do you want in the world? So it's very much based on personal development. The students also have no tests at all. They experiment, they fail, and it's not, and in the end, they just present their plan for what they want to do in the world. And we help them with seeing new methods, new tools, and connect them to places in the field where they can try out and test their gifts. And the gifts can be very personal. I remember one student once defined her gift as, I listen to the people who don't speak. And I think to have such a gift in the world and framing it like this, which is no school would do, but you can feel from the little sentence how essential actually that quality and needed that is. And I think another thing that there are many things I often speak about. One is that the sensitive people who feel inadequate or not, don't get good points and are doubting and unsure of themselves, are often the sensitive people who are the voices that are better connected to what the world needs, or have more caring. They think about the consequences of their actions for others. And those voices, I feel, are often walked over, especially by the male dominance culture. Sorry, I'm a man, and I like it too. But these we need to discuss how we deal with each other. And in our school, this discussion is free to take place. And even our students sometimes do uprising against the teachers, and I love that actually, because it's that they feel free to speak themselves out, try things out, challenge what we're doing, makes us better teachers and them stronger in the world. And that's actually what we educate.
It's really interesting hearing you speak. I often have to defend my choice as a parent on the manner in which I chose to educate my child, which is through the world and through world schooling, and I know you understand that. But often I say the more important things that I feel that my son is learning, besides, the academics that are in context, which have meaning to him, are the soft skills, which are reasoning, which are trusting yourself, how to make logical choices, how to trust your intuition, all of these things. And those are the things that I hear you talking about. I was wondering what you say to critics that are saying, academics, biology, history, these are the things that are important, not the things that you're talking about?
Well, I could talk for an hour about this, which I won't. But one thing is, I think that somewhere in the Middle Ages, when schools started with handing over knowledge to people, which was then very rare, it was very important to focus education on knowledge. But now that everybody has easy access to knowledge, we forgot that there's also something called life. And that, isn't it crazy that in the United States there are people 40-year-olds who don't know how to manage their own house. So the importance of being able to give meaning to your own life, to feel what's necessary, to shape your own passion and urges to help or make a difference into a profession or a business is I think essential. Also, science cannot go deeper when it's based on facts alone. So I recently wrote about this and some scientists said, yes, you have a point. So I dare to say it out loud. But experience is a new edge of science. So when you only give facts and you talk from the outside, and if you only, like in companies, we have more and more strategists, people who think what is the best way to upgrade the money, and they look at the balance sheet and then they move a company, a factory from the United States to China, and then the profits go up and they think it's all well. Now, the sensitive system may feel they're destroying one community. What is it doing to the environment? What is it doing to life? What are they doing to themselves to really want those careers? And when you work for a boss and he puts his arm around your shoulder and whispers, look, Liney, if you do this for me now, you little sweet girl, come on. And then your urge is to run away and say, okay, I'll do it, which is basically a form of force. Now you need soft skills and inner strength and training of your heart and training of your guts to feel something's off here and it isn't right. And so social skills are essential for being more than a worker who just does what the boss wants. Befehl ist Befehl was the German thing in the Second World War, and it's still working like this in fear in many companies. And to step outside that system, you need to feel what's going on, to be in touch with the world, to be able to translate what you feel into actions that make a difference.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed listening to you speak. But let's move on to Ku, who is also on our panel this evening. And I would love it if you could tell us what your connection is to not only this project, but a little bit about your background and the passions that you bring to this project as well. So the floor is yours, Ku.
Aloha, my name is Ku, and I live on the island of Hawaii, and I'm a native Hawaiian educator for a long time. I started in 1985 and realized right away that my Hawaiian students were brilliant, but were not succeeding in the Western system. And so since then, I've been working on what we call preferred models of education, because we really don't like the concept of alternative, because it has that ring to be sometimes perceived as less than. It's like, there are alternatives because we cannot do whatever we are supposed to be doing, and so we have to find an alternative. For us, it's not about that. It's about preferences. It's about our way of learning, which is a native way of learning. And Flores talked a little bit about indigenous knowledge, that has been passed down from our ancestors for thousands of years, that really teaches us to be in harmony with each other, with the land or the environment and the spiritual world. And so the type of education that we have developed over the last 30 plus years is really grounded in what we call a pedagogy of aloha. It's aloha in Hawaiian, besides meaning hello and goodbye, really means love and compassion and charity. And what we found out that really the magic change agent, the number one thing that the students of all ages over the last 30 years have identified as being the critical factor why they love learning versus hating to go to school is really that somebody cares about them. And so we have developed this pedagogy where really all of us in the learning process are family. So I started a school in 2000 and I was a director there for until 2010. Everybody calls adults uncles and aunties, and elders are called grandparents. There's no Dr. Kahakalau or Miss So-and-so or Mr. So-and-so, but we are all uncles and aunties. And that kind of and then the students are brothers and sisters, older brother, younger brother, older sister, younger sister. So what that does, it really defines responsibilities. It defines familial connections. We talked about connections, and it really provides the students with a network of people that they trust and that they know care for them. And so it's a very safe environment. And I think that is really, really important. In general, our model is culturally driven, meaning it's Hawaii-centric. All subject areas start in Hawaii and then move out in concentric circles, whether it's math or language arts or history or sports or, you name it. It's family-oriented in that we do multi-age learning. So we have older siblings or older students taking care of the younger students. And that doesn't always mean that the younger ones learn from the older ones, because as was mentioned earlier, every person has many gifts. And sometimes younger kids can be incredible teachers to older students as well. It also involves bringing in the parents and especially the elders into the learning process. And we're community-based in that we really try hard to have the communities design and control the type of education, particularly the curriculum, so that the projects that the students are involved in solve real problems in the community and help communities to become self-sufficient again. It is definitely a liberatory approach to education in that besides providing our students with very strong cultural foundations and a reconnection to our Hawaiian values, it is also an effort to educate them about the political reality, including the fact that Hawaii has been occupied by the United States since 1893, and we are working on de-occupying our island nation and becoming independent again. So there is that liberatory aspect as well. And so it's really an interesting mix of ancient and modern. And in fact, over the years, we have really realized that ancient is modern and that many of the practices that our ancestors have engaged in for thousands of years are really what education research shows are the latest, greatest approaches in 21st century education. Just to give you an example, let's take assessment. In our ancestors, when they wanted to know if somebody was ready to become, let's say, a navigator, they would blindfold them, take them out on the canoe, spin them around so many times, and then say, okay, find your way home now. If they found their way home, they passed. If they didn't find their way home, they flunked, then they had the option of becoming a sweet potato farmer or whatever, something else, but not a navigator, because you don't want to be out there we are 2,000 miles away from the next islands. You don't want to be out there and your navigator not know how to get there. That type of assessment is today called performance-based assessment to an authentic audience using the latest education jargon, and it is exactly the same thing that we have been practicing for 2,000 years. So really for us, this idea of education with aloha is a way that has worked for a very long time for us, but also a way that still works now, and we strongly believe a way that will help us to remain natives of the land, for generations to come. The school that I started is called Kanu'oka'aina, which means natives of the land from generations back. I've been involved with the Ecoversities movement since 2015. We met for the first time in Portugal at that time. And as part of that movement, I was also in Costa Rica this February, and that's where I met Philip. And so that's kind of how I came to be involved in this project. Philip just kind of hit me up and said, do you want to write a chapter? And I said, well, I'll do my best presenting an indigenous voice. Yeah, so I don't know how much, as Flora said, I could go on for hours as well. So I'll stop here, so if you have follow-up questions or move on to it.
Yeah, actually, thank you so much for being on this panel, and thank you. One of the things I want to recognize is I believe that you're the only panelist tonight that is working with K through 12 or younger kids, where everybody else, I believe, is either adolescent or higher education. Yes, no, maybe not. Okay. Then that's an assumption that needs to, well, anyway, then you guys can talk about the ages that you serve in just a minute. But in terms of one of the things that you mentioned, Ku, which I thought was absolutely incredible, was you utilize a community bonding that creates an intrinsic accountability. And I believe that societies at large want this kind of accountability to one another, but they don't facilitate means in order for people to get to that place in order to feel intrinsically motivated to support the community. I'm not sure if you're getting what I'm talking about, but I want to recognize that the community as an intrinsic part of the education that you're talking about seems to me to be quite valuable. If you can talk about maybe how that then folds out into the communities that you are living in, not just in the school environment, but the community at large.
Yeah. So first of all, my background is as a secondary teacher, and the school that we started is a preschool to 12th grade, high school, elementary, middle school, high school. But I've also been working in higher education, and what we are currently working on is called EA, which is Education with Aloha Ecoversity, which really targets youth from 15 to 25. So that's my latest project that I've been working on, is to work with that gap group that right now really is sitting on the couch not knowing what to do. As Native Hawaiians, we're the most under and uneducated ethnic group in our homeland, and so this is really an important group that we need to mobilize in order to empower ourselves and to move towards political and economic and cultural independence, really. So at the same time, that group is also intricately connected to the community, in that all of these youth have their personal mentors, cultural mentors. They have what we would call educational mentors, meaning people that work with them towards their career path and seeing what skills that they need to continue that. And they also have opportunities to do mentorships and internships in the community. So for us, the community is really the textbook. The community is, and the environment is really the place where learning takes place. So the school that I created when I was there was 50% in the environment, 50% in the classroom. And that's because we didn't have any classrooms. We had to go out into the environment. But as we were forced to do that, we realized that that's the best thing that could have ever happened to us, because the students learn how to interact, how to take care of the environment, and most of all, how to love the land. In Hawaii, we have a concept called Aloha Aina, which means love for the land. And you can't learn that in the classroom. This is something that you have to learn outside, getting your hands dirty, putting the seeds in the soil, watching those seeds grow and blossom, and that relationship is only developed through hands-on learning. And the same is it goes for the communities. You know, relationships with the community cannot be developed in the classroom. They have to be developed within the community, solving real problems that exist in the community, whether they're social problems, environmental problems, cultural issues, you know, whatever it may be. And so the students become these authentic researchers or co-researchers that are there to collect data. For example, we did data on 100% stream restoration in a very remote valley, where the students basically found out that, yes, if you restore the native stream flow, the natives will thrive. And that doesn't only go for the animal and plant species, but that also applies to us as native people. You know, once the native resources return to where they're supposed to go, things thrive. And really that's what it's about, is to create thriving communities that are self-sustaining, that intrinsically, like you said, empower each other and ourselves by practicing the values that have been passed down from our ancestors. First and foremost, the value of aloha, charity, and kindness, and reciprocity. So reciprocal learning, reciprocal sharing, reciprocal helping, all of those things that are a way of life, that were a way of life in traditional Hawaii, and that have to be continuously a way of life for us if we're going to remain Native Hawaiians.
Thank you for that. Thank you. What a beautiful introduction. I'm so glad you're part of this panel. Let's move on over to Ira. Ira, you've been sitting so patiently next to Felipe and in front of this big crowd of people. I'd love to know what your role is in this project, and go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hello. I'm Ira, I'm from Ukraine, and I'm co-founder of Alternative School here in Hawaii here. And, you know, I'm here in education sphere not a lot, just 2 years. And, you know, everything that are going here in Ukraine is, you know, very specific, because we have a lot of alternative schools. They are very little. But this community is very close, and we have to do something we have to make more noise about it, and that's why I bring Philip here to Ukraine to make more noise. And we are trying to move on this movement. We are trying to be more loud, and our goal is to tell another parents and children, hi, we are here, you have a choice. You can go not just only to regular school, you have a choice, you can do this choice every time. Yeah? And what we're doing now, we have a community here, you see, all
a small part.
It's a very small part of this community, and we're trying to help to move this education and alternative education to each of us. We are staying in Kyiv, but Ukraine is very big, and we have movements here, but we need to move them to another cities, and it's very important for us because we have the representatives here from another cities, and they bring these ideas to their cities to share this, you know, and we have to know how could it be, and Philip will help us with this. So we have some projects to be involved in. It's an educational tour and a book, and you know, this is just the start of this movement. So
my question to you, Ira, is your organization, your school, serving as an incubator of alternative ideas in education for other schools within the Ukraine?
you know, it could be, but it is not. This is a very small alternative school, and we're existing just a half of year, and we're trying to build another system of education that's suitable for us. We have no lessons, we have no classes, children are learning all together, and they have their own plans, you know, and they don't have to do something if they don't want to, but we have some limits from our Ministry of Education, and we have to deal with it. So each of them, they have to learn English, math, and so on and so on and so on, but in the way they want to. They have some freedom in our school, and you know, there are a lot of people who are interested in our system. They come to us. They're welcome, very welcome. We explain our system, and they see these happy children, you know, and they trying to do the best for their school also. But this system is the best way for our school. For their school will be another best system, you know. And now in Ukraine, we are trying to different way of learning, different way of system, you know, and different way of dealing with this situation in Ukraine. But yeah, we have to promote it. We have to be more loud. We have to involve more and more children and parents in this system.
And Ira, can you tell me which age group you serve? Your students behind you look to be older.
In my school, we have now the children, the age from the first grade to 6th, but the next year till 9th. And
behind us, they are not the students.
You mean this group of people, they are younger.
Those are, no, we have here people who are running their own educational projects, their school, they started their own school, bloggers.
NGOs, everything connected to education. It's not about just schools. It's, everyone has their own project or want to have, and they involved in this sphere. So they're
Okay, now you can understand my confusion. I understand now. I'm sorry about that. And so you are actually sitting among your peers that are all concerned with alternative and are approaching alternative education from their own perspectives. So I understand perfectly now. Wonderful. Thank you, Aira. Thank you so much for sharing your contribution to this project. And so Felipe, sorry, now I went back to the Spanish pronunciation. Felipe, tell me then, what are you doing as you gather these change makers in education? What does it look like to help facilitate a collaboration? And tell me about some of the people that are surrounding you.
So actually, this is really a very nice example here in Ukraine, because this is what through the book and through the process of also understanding how can we create this more connected, because the book, we have 16 authors. In the end, you can have 1,000 voices, millions of voices who are really now understanding and also are active in doing something, are active in the form of transformation in education. And this is also why it's very important, because I mean, you see also the speed how this is moving on. I mean, met Ira 3 weeks ago in Israel at the IDEC, 1 month ago at the IDEC, the International Democratic Education Conference, and then we were talking, we were including more peers, more people who were really like, okay, you know, there's so many movements going on. I met crew at universities gathering in Costa Rica. There are so many standalone movements there. This is what I talked before about really like uniting and joining the narrative. Since also there's a very specific, a lot of movements or networks are going into, or initiatives are going in the very specific field. This is good because you have a huge diversity of opportunities that here. We have here bloggers, we have here people who are working with kids in libraries. We have here people from the parents' union. So this is also what you see. Education is not transformed within the institution, school, or institution of a university. Education is transformed by the civic society. We all now need to take on the responsibility that we have a system that is outdated, and we need to find quickly solutions. It is not a matter of the government. It's not a matter of what schools are providing. It's what we are understanding. As also Floris and Co. and Dimas mentioned before, learning is not just happening in the classroom. Learning is happening when we are meeting up together. And I think this is all very important because also, especially the movement of transformation of education needs to learn to collaborate. And this is what we are doing also here. It's, for us, it's every time it's a new beginning. In Brazil, we initiated a biannual conference where 600 teachers, pioneers in education are coming together and sharing it. This is what's happening. There are regular meetings coming, there are regional meetings coming together, and there are activities that are beyond the certain structures that we have in institutions or organizations. And I think this is important. As we change also the way how we learn, we also change the way how we live and work together. So this fluid structure, this fluid moment of how we can really be part of a movement and also like lead it with our own institutions, with our own resources we have, that is becoming so important. So the book as such is a start. It's a kind of a collective call where we will redefine the medium book with it. It's not a book that you get it, then you read it, and that's it. No, we just will print a limited number of books, and then we share it. We want to read it, we want the people read it and then pass it on to another person. Because what we also create then is it's a social dynamic, and you're also here in a bubble. You have to acknowledge it. Because people who are interested in alternative education, they're very easily meeting each other. I mean, this move or this scenery is still very small. People are really well known with each other, but it's something that is now needs now to get out in the mainstream. And this is why the whole initiative around the book. The book is just a social object. It's not the main thing. There are 16 amazing authors. I mean, you're talking now with Floris and with Ku, and you get to know like the wealth, the richness, what they are bringing. And as we say, we have from examples from Africa. We have now. I'm really happy that Ku is also bringing the indigenous perspective. And then we have a lot of people that are really like going far beyond what we are talking right now if we're talking about innovation of education.
Yeah, this is amazing. What I find interesting, Philippe, is that you're using a very traditional medium to create a connection. I was wondering why you're doing a printed book versus utilizing something online.
It's actually a merge. What we are going to do is, if you get the book, you can register and you will register on the platform. With this, we can also see where this, and we can track where this book is traveling. With this, we also can comment and discuss things which is in the book, but also outside, what are topics that are coming outside. So we are sharing the experiences and stories that are going on in different regions of the world. This book is traveling from Brazil to Ukraine. You have certain areas, certain spots, certain stops, which are really like also can contribute to this richness of experiences. So the book is it's not only a traditional medium, but we make it more or less to an Internet of Things. So we connect through the registration on the platform. We also connect the whole community, the global community around the world on individual space, where then we can move on and like I think there will some editions are falling because already just through promoting or discussing the book, you get so many interesting stories from people who should share their stories, and this we can make in form of a blog, this we can make in form of a platform where we really bring people together. And this is what comes out will be really a very global and very self-directed process.
What's interesting to me is that both Floris and Kru have spoken about the value of community in education. And it looks, what's interesting is, Philippe, the project itself is really about creating a broad community that is all-reaching, you know, around the planet. I'd like to hear from maybe Floris or Kru how this can affect the work that you're doing, whether it feels as if the work that you're doing, maybe Floris, you can speak first about doing the work that you're doing, and maybe somehow it might feel as if you're working in a vacuum, and if indeed being part of a grander movement or a greater network somehow affects or informs how the work that you do is actually translated.
Well, to start with, reacting on Koos' story, I'd like to say that many things she talks about also happen at Nomads. Like the school is a community. The students run the school. They have keys to the school. Sometimes there's no staff in the building, and they are responsible even for the cleanness of the school. So the shopping, and some often students become the cooks for the school and or events that are happening there. So it's also in the Western hemisphere, the rediscovery of the importance of community and the learning through through community. And I think also what I see in the Netherlands especially is the enormous amount of people who are 27 have the first job and they get burnouts, because the whole narrative of get your degree and then you have a career is becoming less and less appealing, and also it doesn't have a heart enough for people, and it doesn't contribute to where you feel the world, climate change, something needs to happen, and your job is not doing it. So how to combine these things? And here, when you read a book of 16 people from all around the world, where what I would say, some of the things are based on, you could also say, medieval Western alchemism, on our spiritual sources that are being rediscovered and integrated into school. We see that through the similarities, what I feel with what Koos telling, although she talks really from her own perspective, there's so many bridges between it. You could say there's a global emergence of a story where such a book, you know, very simple book gives authority, you know, he wrote the book, so can you come and speak? So it will help, you know, it's I would say ugly in a way, but the status is also important in our world. You know, if Deepak Chopra comes to speak on your cable, suddenly it will have way more viewers than if it's currently us, although I would say he is telling the same things. So status is then sometimes overrated, whereas the lack of title of the grassroots people, actually they talk from passion and making things happening, and the sharing of the stories where people step in and say, hey, I recognize this story, I recognize either this pain, or I recognize this approach, or hey, I want this to recognize the purpose, is where the book is a means to gather those people and see that there's something emerging from the whole world, which actually is common sense, I would say. Basically, it's common sense returning to what it means to be a community and part of being part of the world, rather than the dominant emperor, you know, so for me personally also, it's fun to be a teacher at this school, although I'm not so often there. to live a life in which I can play a lot, and I may not have the best income, but I have a shit amount of freedom to do crazy things in the world. And so one of the things I'm very proud of, and that I would also say, I thought it was fun. I invented something called the counter for life questions. So you come to the counter, you ask your life question, what you're struggling with in life. But who's behind the counter? Children from around 8 to 12. And they have this wisdom. And then the first time I did it, I thought this is a joke. And then a woman comes to me and says, Floris, I need 6 months of therapy to admit a child is right. So many adults apparently think that children are baskets where you throw in knowledge and then they become something, and they don't realize children are already living beings with their own 100% presence and awareness of what's going on. And education is about getting that presence out and more strong in the world rather than diminishing it so that they can do the test right, give the right answers. And that needs a different approach and aliveness and a passion. And, you know, the difference between a good teacher and a bad teacher is also the equality of attention. It has nothing to do with, do you have the right degree? Sometimes the neighbor who really believes in you when you're hurt and wounded in your community, and he believes in you and says, but you can do this, you know, that trust is sometimes way more essential than knowing where Africa is. Although I would say that too is in a way very important in our modern society. I would say even essential, but we need both. Tuku or whoever.
All right. Well, I certainly agree with the gist of everything that you had to say, Floris. And I think one of the things is, you know, that while we are very comfortable with innovations in business, in banking, and you know, everything pretty much in the 21st century, we're somehow stuck with this notion that education, how it's been going on for the last 200 years, you know, is the only and the best way, which makes no sense whatsoever. You know, I mean, if everything else has changed, you know, the way that you bank, the way that you communicate, you know, the way that you, you know, I mean, eat, everything, the way you cook, the way you know, the way you sew, the way you know, pretty much do anything, drive and move around from place to place. Everything has changed, and everybody is okay with those changes. But when it comes to making changes in this super archaic, outmodeled, not working kind of a system of education, everybody goes, oh my God, you know, it's like we're committing a sin, you know, kind of we're doing something just horrible, and attacking something that is holy, or that is, you know, just totally so awesome that we can't touch it at all. And I think that's really one of the things that I hope that this book is going to demystify and to deconstruct, you know, and saying, hey, this is not working. It hasn't worked for a long time. It's not that it's not working for indigenous peoples. It certainly isn't, but it's not even working for anybody else either, you know, kind of thing. So instead of hiding behind this, we don't know where it comes from, you know, this perception that the system that is currently in place, which is the same system that was in place 100 years ago and 200 years ago, pretty much with extremely little variations in terms of being in one classroom with one guy or one person, you know, talking to 23 same age children or students or whatever, feeding them information, all that, you know, it's about challenging that status quo and really looking at models, and in our case, you know, models that have worked for a very, very long time for us, that are common sense. And I think common sense is one thing that was really lost in education somewhere along the way, that are, again, conscious that, as was mentioned by Floris too, that we can learn from each other, including from people much younger than us, from children much younger, but that we can also learn from the environment, and that we can also learn from the spiritual world. And in our case, that is an extremely important component that is also added into this mix. In other words, we start our days with what we call protocol, because since we get government funding, we can't do any kind of prayers. So we start our day with protocol that is basically about centering ourselves, about asking our ancestors for guidance and for knowledge and for wisdom and for intuition, and all those kind of things. Before we go to sleep, we ask for enlightenment to come in our dreams, and knowledge that is at a different kind of not so much a head, but what we call a gut level, for that to sort of enlighten, into consciousness, emerge into consciousness. So there's all of those aspects as well that are there, in terms of learning from multiple sources, and not just from a textbook or not just from a sage on the stage, kind of a thing, somebody that supposedly knows about whatever it is, math or science or you name it. So I think this effort, to really show that this reality that education needs to change is surfacing around the world, and people are just no longer willing to accept a completely outdated, non-functioning, system of education, just because that's the way it's always been, supposedly always, and we all know that it hasn't been always, but that's the perception kind of a thing. And developing models that are more aligned with 21st century realities. And one of those realities is that the world is getting a lot smaller, and that the world is in deep trouble, both human, as far as human interaction is concerned, but especially as far as the environment is concerned. If we don't start doing something radically different than we have in the last 100 years as a human family of nations, in another 100 or 200 years, our children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren will not be able to survive on this planet anymore. And that land stewardship and land passion and love for the land, is something that needs to be retaught, because we've had in the Western system for sure, 200 years of a concept of subduing the earth, and as long as you make money off it, you can do anything you want to the environment, because as long as there's profits involved, and that was mentioned earlier, everything is fine. That's the only measuring stick is profit and gain, and becoming richer, whatever that's supposed to mean. So I think that's a really important part why we need to collaborate, I think, so that people see this is not just one crazy lady in Hawaii or one off the rocker kind of guy in Ukraine, wherever people are, but that this is really a global movement, and that people around the world are standing up and saying, let's be honest, let's be critical about a system that clearly hasn't been working, and let's devise new ways that are not going to just help us as individual communities, families, nations, but really have a global impact in terms of how we as people live together, but also how we as people take care of our environment.
There he is. I have to add something, of course, because you can feel, look at the people behind her, and some might be wondering about, but my job, or are we fighting corporate life, or do we want to destroy Western civilization? No, that's not the case. But we live in nature, the dead zones in the ocean. In Russia, a whole sea disappeared. So the nature is really in a bad shape, and it needs all our efforts on this. And the second thing I think is why this economical also makes very much sense is if we green our cities. Let's say 500 years ago, Hawaii was not connected to any country. They were totally self-sustaining. Many economies around the world were all self-sustaining. And our cities need to be way, way more green. We need trees on every rooftop that have as fruit, is more healthy for the air. We need, and we have the crazy thing, if that is our economic collapses, the money system falls, that there is enough people who want to do work, there's enough work, there's enough stuff still, and yet we all go hungry, which is totally crazy. So a state that can run towards a crisis where we all are hungry while there is enough stuff in the world makes no, it's totally crazy. So the resilience everywhere in the world, in the West at least, you get more cities that train resilience or city movements. I'm working also with a city movement in one of the Dutch cities where they want to make the city self-sustaining. Because that's also part of how education is. And that takes, so there is the whole thing that Ku says about Hawaii also goes for the rest of the world. Makes total sense. We are part of nature. And at the same time, to make that economical viable, we need to have self-sustaining cities where people create their own jobs. So the skill to create your own job, to deal with the local issues on a local level while being part of the whole is way more essential than climbing up a ladder to a top where you get filthy rich from being at the top and the rest, but all the people that drop out we see as inadequate or losers. But there's so many talented people, the artists that hardly make money give great comment and feedback about what the world needs. Some of the people who are not earning anything but are volunteers for the society, they bring the value. Everyone that keeps to the rules and helps society is actually carrying civilization. So it's not the few leaders who have all the money and the power who are carrying civilization, it's us all together. And this bottom-up mindset, or the mindset that we're all responsible and we're all part of it, should be the foundation of our education, because that doesn't mean that you don't educate to be part of a system and climbing up a ladder, but how am I contributing to a living system that I am part of? And how can I make that living system flourish and thrive more? And that might be also include plant trees everywhere. And Philip wants to add to that, so here's to Philip.
Yes, I think what is also very important to see, and this is also what I think you get also the picture. It's not only the book. It's not the book. It's more really like a game to bring and connect so different widespread networks and initiatives and movements. Also because people like Ku, people like Flores, I mean, they're very often, if they're not seen by the system, or people here in the room, we are not seen by people who are making decisions. And this is so wrong, because who is advising for innovations is actually going in the same direction where the system is already going. So the innovations as such are in places that are very often overseen. They are not or seen as uncomfortable for the decision makers, which is really still not true. This is where we all need to really work together. This is all really like a point where we have to understand, if we make a transformation in education, it also needs that we need alternative economic models. We need a gifting economy. We need a sharing economy. We need a solidarity economy. Because if a 6-year-old, as Ku was mentioning before, if younger people are also able to teach older people, then what is happening is that all of a sudden the economic value is really outside of what we call or what we see in the system. And this is where we start to also to understand this, and what we would like to try with the book, to base it on gifting principles. So you get the book and you might also give a value back, but it's not something that is asked for you. It's a gift, so you get the gift first. And we need to learn that, to learn again leading with the gift, and not always look, okay, what's in there for me? What is really something what we can make out of that? So this is also, there also are some principles what we want to bring in together there.
Yeah, and to add on Philip, I might agree or not agree so much with the gifting economy, but to think about the economic model and to question it and to see how exactly it's helping. And at the same time, I totally agree with the gifting economy. The strange thing is that those people that want to give are poor and helping, and those, John Chomsky said that once. Why is it that the poor people are helping more and try to make a difference for others than the rich, the billionaires? The American billionaires have enough money to replant and reforest every desert in the world, but they're not doing it. Why? So, and here I think also we need to look at scientific education, because it asks, and inventors, they always think, what's possible? How can I make this product? And basically the mindset is, where is the money in this? And the other mindset is, what's inconvenient for people? So we make an invention to make it more convenient, which is slowly taking the juice out of life, because everything is made easy and then you have to pay money to go on a holiday to have the invention that you don't have in your own life. So educational training in science should not only ask how does it work and what can I invent based on how it works, but also what will the impact be for the whole world? What is the consequence of my actions in the whole system? If that question doesn't become part of education and of science, it's a kind of fascism, I would say, to the whole natural environment. That's a tough question saying, but that's where I go.
Yeah, if I may just chime in really quick, because we were talking about, Flores, you mentioned, in Hawaii, it's only been 250 years that we went from 1 million people and being 100% self-sustainable by sharing with one another without any kind of a money economy, any type of money, even the concept of that, really sharing with one another what we had. It's been 250 years from going from 100% self-sustaining to having the same amount of people on our islands that we had in 1778, but requiring 90% of our food and pretty much everything else that we need to live coming from the outside. And that's not been an accident. That's been a specific targeted effort to make us dependent, to tie us and chain us to this global economy that's really not working, again, for anybody except for those very few on that very top that Flores was talking about. So for us, really, 250 years going from 100% self-sufficient to 90% dependent, it's going to be a huge effort to undo it, but we have to start and we have to move quickly, because we really don't know how much longer this world economy is going to be able to feed itself, sort of a thing. And for us, especially being 2,000 miles away from the next place, to run out of anything, food, toilet paper, or whatever, is going to be a huge, huge issue. So we really are, trying to work hard to reconnect to the land and to, instead of golf courses, grow and export crops, grow food again, and try to become more self-sustaining than we currently are.
Yeah, and I hear this over and over from different communities as we've been traveling as well, that through colonialization, I can never say that word correctly, that the concept of what is valued has changed. We lived for several years in Peru and have visited the Amazon many times, and they've spent a significant amount of time there, and these cultures are losing their language, they're losing their connection to community and to land that they had before, and suddenly something imposed upon them, which is a system of economy that is so artificial to them, and they're forced now to pay taxes and to pay for water and to pay for things that was provided to them just through nature and the land before. Seems like such a disconnect. And it truly is. And I understand what you're saying, Koo, but we are here in this place now. We're not 250 years ago. We're in a time where culture and the collective consciousness believes that education is something that is given to you or earned within a system that doesn't work. Those of us that are the outliners, that are in this movement, that see that this is simply not the truth, are fighting against a sustained system, a system that is educating people to keep this container as it is, to keep the system, to replenish it with people that are workers, that are keeping the system as it is. I understand the concept of this book. The book is to create a voice and to create possibly a tipping point where people feel empowered that they're a part of a movement that is changing from that. But what do we do? What do we do in the meantime? And I'm going to put that out to the panel. What do we do besides contributing to the book and contributing to this movement? What do we do now?
Well, as I say, I'm working on new kinds of education, just trying them out and see. And then like the evening that was about the unexplainable in life, that shaped your vision. You could say that was a very spiritual evening, but also there's a beautiful sense of feeling I am part of something bigger in that room. Suddenly people feel there's something carrying us all, and there's a ball of something that we weren't defining or putting to Christianity or alchemism, or it was just these things happened, and it went outside the context of the scientific thing. I'll show you a model I made, just if I may. It's very simple. It's very simple. Now, most education just gives you this horizon, the horizon of the professional field. Just watch, where do I need to act in the world and how does it work? So I'm a dentist and I learn how to do dentistry. Whereas this line, from the spiritual through the whole body, is essential, or the blue, I would say, is the understanding of how the whole system works. How seeing, if I'm a dentist and I put in, the certain kind of fillings are actually very poisonous for you and the climate. So what am I actually, that the bigger scope, and how does the work, what do I do for the whole pharmaceutical industry? That understanding is also important. And as what also Koo talks about, the spiritual understanding and relationships with the world, the how am I part of the cycles of life, and feel the undercurrents. When you walk on a mountain, everybody knows this feeling, or at least I hope everybody knows. You come on a mountain in nature and you look and you breathe, and something feels so wholesome there. And there some people, and I am also part of the Happy Startup Summer Camp, where all these people who work in the cubicles they want to escape the city. They work very hard to have a great job in a company, and suddenly they sit in a gray cubicle the whole day long, working and not enjoying that kind of view, what you could also have every day. Same time, I also sitting in my room every day, but at least I think of pictures and stories and ideas how to explain it. I'll show you another picture, very simple. This is traditional education, outside in information about how the world works, and you get feedback, personal. So this half is traditional education. You get personal feedback, and it says basically sit still and do better on your English. But the word education actually comes from the word educare, which means to grow from the inside out. And the word school comes from the word taking time for yourselves. So how the fuck did we end up with a system that says we put knowledge in from the outside and in obligated time? And the other thing is, there's the universal principles. So this is how the universe works, and these are principles, how the universe works, and you learn how to adapt to them and work with them. That's true. But many people have a gift that's totally against the system. One of the most amazing speeches I ever heard was from a guy who didn't look at the audience. He was totally shy. You could feel with his whole system to say, I don't want to do this. This is terrible. But my message is so important. We all need to hear it. And he mumbled into the microphone and everybody was glued. So if we would push that guy to be not himself, his story would become less authentic. So it seems to go against the principles of a grand how do you say, presentation. But the voices of honesty are actually so much more important. Also, when young students speak in our school, the whole school had decided we go left, and then one student spoke up, and he said, "I have a small doubt," and by giving him time to listen, the whole school then switched direction because he touched something and that resonated within us. So training for inner compass, and that's also what I do. I give workshops, which I call the way of the fool, because even you call me out of the box, Lainey. And in the way of the fool, I help people to train their inner compass and play with possibility and feel what is needed to in the system, or how to speak the truth, or how to echo back what somebody's actually saying. So these are all social and soft skills, but they have a spiritual dimension. And I hope they have an economic dimension where you can fight for yourself and perhaps with your whole community become self-sustaining. Because as Koos says, if you import your food and the system breaks down, you're totally fucked. And that the chances of that happening are becoming bigger and bigger, since none of the Wall Street people were totally taken down or punished to create that broken system. And actually the West economy, and that's why also I think that should be part of education, is eating up more and more countryside to bring money to the top few percent, while making the local environments for the people who are still a little bit behind more and more unlivable. And I know that the people who live in those situations really want education like the traditional way. I talk with people in Pakistan, and they want traditional Western education and do the test because, wow, then you also have universities and good scores. And even in Pakistan already, people are wondering, where's the organic farming? How are we poisoning our country? I saw a movie today of somebody driving through miles and miles with a car of garbage. So it's a car driving through a street with on both sides only garbage for miles within Pakistan, because they don't have the cleanup hiding it. You know, I would say the smart hiding of the garbage system that we have here. And education also needs to show those things and aspects, because if it only tells you how to do your job well, it's missing the point. And it's not helping. Perhaps as an individual you're helping, you feel, oh, I have a good job, it's great, but your grandchildren will curse you for it. So I love the Native American aspect of educate, train, make decisions for the next 7 generations. And I think here the Dutch are a little bit both crazy and smart, but the smartness is we have dikes, and if the dikes break or the seas rise, we're gone. So this consensus feeling of we need to take care of the whole has also for us deep, profound effects. And then perhaps we all have to move to Ukraine, when the Netherlands is gone, or Hawaii, but that's also an island, and they're already with too many. So I think Ukraine. Hello, we're coming.
It's beautiful here. It's very beautiful. And following up also what Floris now is saying. You can hear so many stories, and there's so much going on, and this is something that we have to share. This is something that we really need to bring together. We're talking about here in the Ukraine, like really bringing people like Floris, like to do this space here, because this sharing needs to go on a global level. There is something very often people here in their own country is not heard or not seen, which does not make any sense. But there's all of a sudden an attraction coming if somebody from outside is coming in and saying something. And tomorrow, for example, the opportunity to meet the Minister of Education and also to give her feedback about the reform that they are doing over here. And this is also where we can invite each other. If you have something to comment on that, Ku, Florence, Lainey, and also the people here in this group, because this is something that we can now create through this unification or this unification. That is really like to create this opportunity to also, because it's not opposing the system. We also don't have to forget we created it for a good reason, and there is nothing. It's broken, it's outdated, but those people also feel it and they need support. So if you fight it, you also create more confusion, more chaos where they actually need help. And this is something that we really need to see. That is, how can we help each other? And this is also where the core of the preferred educators, I love this very much, what you're saying, needs to come together, and also like in the diversity that we have. There's so much really cool stuff going on, and the solutions are out. The solutions are out there. We all have the solutions. So why don't we just by making it visible that there's already so much going on, creating this kind of exchange and dialogue, and in the end it needs to be a dialogue. In the end it needs to be a dialogue in between the preferred solutions in education. It's still a minority. Because it's not seen, it's not reality for so many people.
I love that you say that it needs to be a dialogue, because, you know, it's hard, especially those that believe in the system, believe in education. Let's just say maybe not the system itself, but believe in education, and they become teachers because they want to help children. I mean, maybe that's the motivation that people get into this. And somehow once they find themselves in the system, they feel trapped and torn. So I really love that you talk about creating a dialogue that is not in opposition to all. Flores, I'm going to go ahead and give you the floor.
Yeah, we recently had two students from another school that came to visit and study nomads, and they said, we don't want to go to this school. And they said that it's a beautiful school and it's brilliant. We don't want to go. We prefer to give the right answers to the tests as our education. And I asked onwards, and then they said, yeah, we're actually afraid to speak out what we really want. We don't know how to do that, and we don't know in our body. I once had a manager, and his colleagues asked him in a workshop, so Herman, what are you feeling right now? And he didn't know where his feeling was. So in his face you go, all this panic, but he didn't know how to connect to his feeling and understand what he was feeling. Even the panic, he was not even aware that he was panicking. So on a very personal level, also students are also afraid, and teachers also, how if I don't test more, if I put my emphasis elsewhere, how do I grow? How can I know that I grow? But I know many people, both young and old, who have a wisdom that has, and they shine, and it has nothing to do with the level of education. It always has to do with the level of passion and the courage to live their truth in openness and a relationship in what the world needs, or in what speaks to the community.
Yeah, thank you for that. Unfortunately, we're running out of time, but this conversation could go on probably for 2 more hours. Thank you so much for that comment, and I just want to go ahead and give everybody the opportunity to give some closing thoughts before we completely run out of time. So we'll go to Ku first, and Ku, share your closing thoughts, and also if you can share any of your projects and websites. And I will remind our audience that you can find the links to everything on our show notes page. So Ku, the floor is yours.
Well, I think the important part is, first of all, that we act locally, and to make sure that that things are improving in our communities, that our next generation knows who they are, so that they have, by understanding the past, they will also then realize what needs to be done in the present and have hope for the future. And I think working on that level, making sure that our ancestral gauges are calibrated based on the values of our ancestors, because those are values that have allowed us to, in our case, live on our islands for thousands of years, that we really realize how dependent we currently are on the outside world, and work towards not just political independence, but most of all economic and independence. Over the last 15 years, we've developed models that are culturally driven, that are family oriented and place-based, that are working. What has not worked is receiving funding from the government, not nearly enough to do a good job, but being dependent on that funding. And so now for us in Hawaii, our next step is to become sustainable as an educational movement, because we know how to do everything else. We know how to educate our students so that they will be responsible 21st century global citizens, as well as very strongly culturally connected Kanaka or Native Hawaiians. And if you want to learn more about that, go to our website at www.kuakanaka.org. And at the same time, we also need to continue to work globally and network and participate, in our case, primarily in indigenous language and culture revitalization movements, because it's that our native culture and our language that again tells us what the values were and what the values need to be in order to move into the future in a sustainable and in a way where everybody feels valued, where everybody feels loved. And we definitely believe that this pedagogy of aloha that has surfaced, initially my PhD was about a pedagogy of liberation, but when we asked the children what was different about this way of schooling, nobody talked about liberation, but everybody talked about this aloha, this feeling of love and being cared for. Some of them said, this is the first time a man has ever told me I love you, and that really was the important piece. That's why all of a sudden they wanted to come to school, when prior to that they had absolutely no interest in coming to school, no interest in succeeding in any system, because it was hopeless. They have many of our people as indigenous people, we've lost hope because we can't compete in the system, and our systems are not looked at as valuable enough to perpetuate, kind of a thing. So I think for us it's both acting locally and globally by working together with people like Philip and all of you folks around the world who are doing the same thing that we want to do, which is basically creating a better world for our children, a world where the environment is loved like an elder, an older sibling, and is taken care of for future generations.
I think I agree with everything that Ku said on the economical level and the place that educations have to take in there. So I'm trying not to overlap too much. But the word love, I think, also for me stands out. And because children, I think, deeply desire to be of meaning. So how can we help people to be of meaning? Children so much want to help, and then we take it out during especially secondary school, high school, that feeling gets crunched somewhere, the idealist that, they all become part of nature groups when they're young, and then somehow it gets crunched and they do sports and then they want a diploma. And then different schools really make a difference. At Nomads, so part of what I'm work is Nomads.nl, we sustain ourselves. So can you imagine that a school that can sustain itself and the students that often find very interesting, very personal professions, from singer-songwriter to organic catering, build also communities. Some are stay in touch years after the education. They're still talking every day. Also, how the school is different. I was sick once for a while. For 5 weeks, I couldn't leave my house, and my students came home to cook for me. And that was so touching, but also it shows how different the relationship between the teacher is when students decide to do that. You know, it's that I think is community and where sharing works. I also work on something called The Gentle Revolution on Medium. I have a blog, and here I write about education. One of the things I state in education is that art, nature, play, collective needs to be way more integrated in education, and also that insight, it may be not enough, but needs to also help people to go to the level of what I would call wisdom. And wisdom is only happens when you experience things. It has to do with insight. You have facts first, and then knowledge, and then that you can test. Then insights still test a little bit. And then wisdom is a different level, also knowing when not to answer a question or to say no to something. And also I'm very much involved in Blossom. Nomads is a half-year program. Everybody in the world can join if they can pay, which is also sad. I wish the government would give us more money because we do the same as other educations, but we don't get funded. So if we already prove we can exist, how much better and more could we do with government funding like all the other schools? And I work with EDUshifts. I'm very much involved in EDUshifts, helping Philip with thinking and developing this, teaching sometimes in other countries as well on Invite. And I work together with somebody else. We're building a network called Blossom, where you can create your own learning and learning line. Like I teach the way of the fool. Now, there's no education where you can learn this. There's not even a book that says how to teach it. So I had to develop it myself. Many people in the world, especially older consultants, learn themselves something they teach to others. So how to develop your own path and your own learning, you can, if you grasp a certain 100 videos from YouTube even together, you can learn how to play the piano or dance or develop your own music style from mixing things from all over the world. So you can also start with yourself and your own gifts, mixing with what is there and is needed out there to create your whole own gifts and shine in a unique way in the world, where the world is said, yeah, we want to pay for this. I even gave workshops called How to Make Money with Your Weakness. We always have to feel bad about what we're bad at, but then my brain goes, oh yeah, I can make money with my weakness. I used to make a mess of things, and there's companies that pay very good money to come create a mess if they're stuck in their frozen boxes while the world is changing too fast, and they need people who want to unsettle them and disrupt them. There's money to be earned by disruption. So our box thinking needs liberation, and we need to really be able to liberate ourselves and find our own path. So with Blossom, we try to, very much as part of EDUshifts, to create how to develop your own learning lines and share that with the world, so you can teach your special gifts to others, or just show, hey, you can walk your own path. And that can be within an education, but it can also very well be out of education by traveling the world. I would advise people to watch Down to Earth, a documentary about a Dutch family that traveled the world to all kinds of indigenous people and learning their lessons. Because I think the message of the indigenous people is what we in the West have lost, and they have a wisdom that we are rediscovering, and it makes so much common sense. And if you tune in to that and you can learn this, I must say I feel part of an amazing field and of love and of interconnections between people around the world that I recognize just by looking into their eyes. And that's something they don't teach at business schools.
Okay, now the closing moment here in Ukraine, they want also to close. It's already midnight and we have been like on since 6:30 in the morning. It was a fruitful day. So I take over the responsibility and say goodbye. Thank you very much for everything. Sharing about what this EDUshifts, what the book will be. This is everything what we do together. So it's in the hand of everybody. We really want to give the responsibility of education in the hands of everybody, and we can share it together. Please share it. Please share it with your networks. The idea of the book is really that it's starting with 16 authors and the people who are involved in promoting and coming together to activate their networks in order to create another wave of really bringing this together. You find the crowdfunding campaign, because it's not only getting the money. The more important thing is that we really get 1,000 supporters doing that. And that's the very strong point, especially since we are not professionals in social media and we are not really well in really executing this campaign. But what we have is, I think we have a lot of personal contacts and relationships that this should bring out, because it should come out from the community. It should not come out from, okay, and we're doing it in the traditional way. So you find it on with the link www.bit.ly/fund-EDUshifts. Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Kool. Thank you so much, Floris. Thank you so much, Lainey. First of all, taking part in the whole conversation tonight, but in the end, for being together with you in the field, because I think it's beautiful. And I think we say something from Ukraine. Bye.
Bye. Thank you. Thank you so much. This has been an incredible conversation. And again, I want to remind anybody who's watching this that you can get to the actual link on the show notes page. It'll be easier than trying to type it in. Thank you so much for being a part of this. And I just want to say thank you to Nina for producing this amazing show. And thank you to Conscious Consumer Network for giving us the space to air this show. And thank you, the viewer, for being interested in these topics. It's a conversation that needs to continue and continue and continue. So in closing, wherever you are and whatever you do, continue to always do it for the love of learning.
If we want to change the world, we must first change the media. Mainstream media exists for the purposes of indoctrination and manipulation of public perception. The world of free and independent media is growing, and with the upsurge in information now available in the public domain, it has never been easier to access free and independent media. The exploration of this information resulted in an experimental project which would provide a fully supported space for researchers, whistleblowers, and seekers of all kinds to express themselves and educate the world. On the 1st of January 2015, Conscious Consumer Network was launched to the world. Nobody thought we would make it this far, but CCN is the longest running free and independent media network of its kind. CCN is a unique collaboration of hearts and souls, bringing you information from different perspectives to educate and inform. Since we started CCN, we have had only one desire: the pursuit of a free, fair, just, sustainable world, and this has not changed. Having overcome many challenges over the last 2 years, CCN is here to stay, and we've got great things lined up for 2017. Help keep CCN on the air by supporting the 2017 Network Support Fund.